In the middle of a busy grocery store, a black man quietly stood in line while a group of white shoppers laughed at him, pointing fingers and whispering cruel things. To them, he didn't look like someone who belonged there. What they didn't know was that in just a few minutes, this same man would turn the entire store silent and leave everyone questioning their own judgment. This isn't just a story about groceries. It's about respect, humanity, and the power of unexpected kindness. Stay with this story until the end, because the moment of truth will change how you see people forever. It was a cold afternoon, the kind of day when most people rushed into the grocery store just to escape the wind outside. Families filled the aisles, carts stacked with fresh bread, fruit, and snacks for the weekend. In the middle of all this noise and movement stood Marcus, a tall black man in his mid-30s. He wasn't dressed in expensive clothes, just a worn jacket and a pair of work boots that had seen better days. Marcus had come to the store after a long shift at work. His hands still carried the roughness of his labor, and his eyes showed a mix of fatigue and quiet strength. He had a simple goal that day, to buy a few groceries and head home. But for reasons he could not control, some people saw him differently. To them, he wasn't just another shopper. They judged him by his appearance, his skin color, and the way he carried himself. As Marcus walked down the aisles, whispers began to follow him. A few white shoppers glanced his way, some with mocking smiles, others with laughter under their breath. To them, it was entertainment. To Marcus, it was a painful reminder of how deeply prejudice could run in everyday life. Still, he kept his head high and moved forward, determined not to give their cruelty any power. But what none of them realized was that this ordinary shopping trip was about to become unforgettable. Marcus was about to teach the entire store a lesson. Not with anger or words, but with an act of generosity that would silence every laugh aimed at him. Marcus moved carefully through the store, adding a few basic items to his basket: milk, bread, rice, and some vegetables. He wasn't someone who liked attention, but it was impossible to ignore the stares that followed him. At first, it was just side glances. Then came the whispers, and soon, the quiet laughter. A small group of shoppers seemed to take particular interest in him. But Marcus kept calm, pretending not to notice, even though each laugh felt like a sting he couldn't shake. By the time he reached the checkout line, the group had positioned themselves nearby. Their carts overflowed with food, boxes of snacks, bottled drinks, frozen dinners, much more than Marcus's small basket. As the cashier began scanning their items, one of the women looked back at Marcus, then whispered something to the man beside her. He laughed loudly, as though Marcus's very presence was a joke. Others in line noticed too. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. The laughter carried on, cruel and sharp, filling the silence of the checkout area. Marcus stood quietly, waiting his turn, his face calm but his heart heavy. He was used to being judged. It wasn't the first time, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. But that day, something inside him shifted. Instead of feeling defeated, he began to think of a way to turn their mockery into a lesson they would never forget. He looked at the group's cart. It was filled with things they clearly needed, perhaps for a family dinner, maybe even for children waiting at home. And in that moment, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He would not answer their laughter with anger or words. He would do something far more powerful. He would turn their judgment into gratitude. As the cashier finished ringing up their large order, Marcus stepped forward. The group of white shoppers turned, confused by his sudden movement. And then, without hesitation, he pulled out his wallet. The laughter stopped. The store went quiet. As Marcus laid his worn wallet on the counter, the cashier froze, unsure of what he was about to do. The group of shoppers, still clutching their overflowing cart, looked at him in disbelief. At first, they thought it was a joke. One of the men even smirked, waiting for Marcus to laugh it off. But Marcus didn't laugh. His face was steady, his voice calm. He pulled out his card and nodded for the cashier to continue. Slowly, the beeps of scanned items filled the air, one after another, until the mountain of food was completely tallied. No one spoke. Customers in nearby lines turned, their heads whispering, their eyes wide in shock. Even the cashier hesitated before finally announcing the total. It was a large amount, far more than the few groceries Marcus had planned for himself. Without hesitation, he inserted his card. A few tense seconds passed before the machine approved the payment. The moment it did, the sound of the receipt printing echoed like a verdict through the silent store. The group stood frozen, their earlier laughter now replaced with shame that burned across their faces. They couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. Every mocking word, every cruel chuckle now felt heavy, exposed under the weight of his unexpected generosity. Marcus didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He picked up his small basket of groceries, turned calmly, and began walking toward the exit. Behind him, the shoppers stood speechless, holding bags of food they hadn't paid for, bags that now carried a lesson they would never forget. And in that silence, everyone who witnessed it realized something powerful. True strength isn't shown through anger or revenge. It's shown through grace, even when it's least deserved. As Marcus walked out of the store, the cold air hit his face, but inside his heart felt warm. He knew the sting of being judged, the pain of being laughed at for things beyond his control. Yet instead of letting that pain grow into bitterness, he had turned it into something far greater. An act of kindness that spoke louder than any words ever could. Inside the store, the group of shoppers stood still, clutching their bags with trembling hands. They had mocked him openly, but now they couldn't even look at each other. Their laughter had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that forced them to face their own prejudice. Around them, other customers whispered to one another not about Marcus's appearance, but about the strength of his character. This story is not just about one man in a grocery store. It's about all of us, about the choices we make when faced with hate, and the impact we can have when we choose kindness instead. So the question is, when the moment comes, when someone looks at you with judgment in their eyes, will you respond with anger? Or will you rise above, just like Marcus did? If you've experienced or witnessed the same, share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.